we've got a lot to get to tonight, so we're going to jump right in. You were tonight placed with what will probably be your committee mates based on the forms that we received. I'll tell you that the majority of you got your first choice, but there were a handful of people for which we weren't able to accommodate that way. I don't know what happened to this group. There should be about 12 of these people. But they're all absent tonight, I guess. I don't know. So the other groups are looking a little bit better, but they will carry the day for now. You're really not going to do too much in your committee group in terms of that work today in regard to selecting projects. So that's okay. But once you hear who's on your committee or whatever, you might let them know that starting next week, it's really important to be here. Or, and this group is just packed. It's really nice. The aging facilities are all in. I love it. All right. Every group, even though you're going to be working in your subcommittees, you're going to have about the same number of items to be working through. Later on, everybody in the room will still have a chance to weigh in on everything else. So just because you're in your particular group right now doesn't mean you're not going to get to see everything else on the big, ugly spreadsheet. Everybody will have that opportunity. All right, so we're going to start out tonight with what I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago, and that is tonight we're learning a lot about basic finance, school finance, really for all school districts, but then with some unique items related to what is a Chapter 49 school district, and that's what GCISD is under the law. And so before we have our CFO come up and give his presentation, his right and left arm and probably his right and left leg are here to do an opening activity with you. So Christy Drilling is our Director of Budget in the Finance Department, and she is going to come up and lead you through an activity that involves that interesting wheel on your table. Christy?
All right. Okay, so everyone should have the lovely little pie chart on your tables. These are for each group. You should have a package of 100 pennies in each bag. But what we're going to first talk about is revenue. So what she just said is basically all of our revenue in the district, I shouldn't say all of it, but primarily most of our sources of revenue comes from our tax dollars. And as you know, there is actually the tax rate, I know this is really small up here, but basically our current tax rate is $1.13. There are two different types of tax, I call them buckets. There's two different types of buckets that consist of that $1.13. You have the maintenance and operations bucket, and that is about 0.9091. The second part of the bucket is the INS, also known as debt service. This is the portion that is paying for your voter-approved bonds. So as you can see, they are not equal. But with that being, just as a demonstration so you can see from out there, we're going to talk about the maintenance and operation tax revenue that we receive here. So on your table, like I said, is this wheel. And of that wheel, it should show you all the different categories of how we spend our money that makes up this M&O portion of our tax rate, okay? So you should see all those different categories. And just briefly to talk about it, also on your table is a definition. I kind of put together just a brief definition of what those categories are. For instance, the first thing is your instruction. So that's pretty much anything to do with the classroom and library. Also, it's your staff development. And of course, it's also your salaries and any type of maintenance and equipment supplies, anything that those people need to support that area. The instructional support, that includes all of your school leadership and of course also the district leadership. So that's primarily consisting of your principals, your assistant principals, your coordinators and directors for your special populations and whatnot. And of course, all of your supplies and materials that they need to support their areas. The third area is your student support services. And this consists of all of your counseling services that we do and provide to our students, our social work services, health services and nurses, also your community services. So, and of course, all the equipment and supplies and materials they need. The fourth area is transportation. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. That's getting our kids to and from school every day. And of course, that includes all of their salaries. So drivers, that's your director, that's your, any type of, also with your supplies, also your fuel, your parts, you name it, insurance is paid with this category. The next category is the co-curricular category right here in the middle. This is your extracurricular, anything that's done outside of the school day. So this can be anything from athletics, drill team, cheerleading, band, speech, UIL, one-act plays, whatnot, anything outside of the classroom day. So of course that has to do with all of the things that they need, athletic equipment, band equipment, anything that they need, that's with this category. Administration, that's your general administration. So that's of course, like I said, that's your finance department, personnel, superintendent's office, communications and operations, and all the things that they need. The next area is called maintenance and operations. So of course that's your grounds, maintenance, custodial services. And of course that's their salaries there too, and all the items that they need. Also it's HVAC units and whatnot. Then you have the student services for non-student. That includes all of your, anything to do to keep the kids safe. So that's your security. It also has to do with your data processing and technology needs. So anything that pays towards their salaries and all of their equipment and needs that they have. And then the last, I have a section called Other. And that's basically anything that doesn't fall into these categories that I just listed here. I can tell you right now that primarily consists of our appraisal district fees. All right, so with that being said, you have 9 different sections on your tables here, and you can see the different categories here. I'd like for you guys just to work as a group and get your $1 is what that represents of what is a dollar spent at GCISD, and how much of those pennies go to each category. So I'm going to give you a few minutes just to work as a group and try to come up with how many pennies should you put for each category. And then we'll discuss in the end what the difference what it actually is. Your best guess.
What we think it should be?
What it is.
I think it should be.
Take a few minutes and just try to get that done as fast as you can.
I guess what do we think is the biggest size portion? So how big is it?
Wouldn't it be about 50 cents?
Yes.
Is instruction about 50%?
Well, yeah.
I would think between instruction and instruction support and student support, it would be about 60.
The salaries. That's what the salaries.
Why don't we have 2 students?
That's a relatively good idea.
Because one of us is student support services and one is with security
Okay, I'm gonna give about 1 more minute.
Yeah,
Category. I can't talk that fast. Time is money, right?
I think that's 50, 5,
It'd be a big team. Materials, equipment. All right. I mean, something could be like 2 for one. Like 1 or 2. I've been in there too. Like a 1 or a 2%. And extracurricular.
Are you guys wrapping it up? You getting
Like
close? Y'all done? Hey,
We spent 200 pennies, so we're coming down now.
we're closing this down. Guys, this is the right group, this is my group. Get the pennies on there.
So 15.
Administration. I just think there's
Well, it's important when you're thinking about
Wrote it down.
all of the security safety. That should be.
You have 2 bags of pennies.
And it's technology.
That's true.
50, 60,
All right, I'm gonna let Christy move into the grand reveal. How do you feel about where you place your pennies? Huh? Does this look like your household budget? Is that how you apportion the monies? No?
Well, definitely
How about at work?
used to working with pennies.
You're used to working with pennies at work? Good deal. All right, Christy.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and present the pie chart and actually how it is. And I know it's pretty small, so let me go ahead and read it to you guys in the back. You should have 64 pennies in instruction alone, and that's because primarily, as you know, we are a service industry. We provide most of our services, and these include mostly payroll. So you're paying for your teachers and your staff there. The next one big area is your instructional support. That's 9%. Maintenance and operations, that's our buildings, 9%. 7% is your student support services. 3 is your curriculum, your co-curricular and extracurricular items. And then there's a tie with 2% with support services and transportation. Danny's shaking his head over there. And the last is only 1%, which is the other category, and that consists of your appraisal district fees primarily. But anyway, so I did notice that's how everyone kind of has a different kind of theory over there, but kind of surprising when you see that most of a dollar goes to instruction, 64% of it, right?
Well, I view that as a good thing. I know that people in my department don't necessarily agree with me, but I view that as the whole reason that we're here, right? What's not on the wheel?
Debt service.
Robin Hood. How many pennies is that? Well, we'll end with that answer. All right.
Said I'm not putting anybody in school. I love you 2%.
So you get 3%.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to give me the 2 cents.
All right. And now I'm going to introduce our Chief Financial Officer, Richard Mack.
Thanks, Paula. As you can tell, I'm well over your age group, and I am the interim CFO. I hate that they say CFO. I am interim CFO. I've spent 40 years in the school business, mainly in finance, and so I'm helping the district out, and hopefully we can get a good CFO replacement in here in short order. I know it's going to be in short order. So let me just, Paul asked me to just run through school finance. And some of it will be maybe a little bit too deep, maybe some of it will be a little shallow, but you'll hit somewhere in the middle. The PowerPoint will be posted. I'm not going to read the slides to you. I'm going to make a comment about each one of them. I've got a timekeeper here. She says she knocks me out at 20 minutes, so we'll sort of roll pretty quickly. State law requires the board to adopt a budget for 3 funds: the general operating fund, the debt service fund, the child nutrition fund. General operating fund is just what it says. Debt service is what you're trying to figure out on capital projects where you can then repay the debt. Child nutrition service is what it means. It's our food service program. The board does not adopt a budget for the capital projects and special revenues. Special revenues is federal grants. They do accept the grant, but you get the grant by going to the federal government, so the government approves those grants. And capital projects funds, they've already, when you have an election and you vote to issue bonds, they then go into the capital projects fund as you issue the debt and then build the buildings. The Foundation School Program is the state funding program. It's an equalized system. They've been to court twice on this issue, in 2005 and 2010. It was to set up to make sure that kids have equal access, no matter where they live, to the resources from both the state and local level, and we'll get into how that is actually administered by TPA. The funding mechanism is simply you take your average daily attendance, that is how many students are there on the average. You've got a property wealth based on the value of your district. You divide the number of kids into that property wealth per student, and you come up with a wealth per student. If it's lower wealth, you get more state funding. Higher wealth students or districts get less state money. We can call it in terms of a glass of water, in that it's an allotment or an entitlement that you're given. It's based on a basic allotment, which is X number of dollars per kid. Right now it's $6,160 per student. The legislature's meeting now. Our hope is they'll add to the basic allotment. That's the only way you get more money if you don't have more kids. You get paid for the kids you have. So you're trying to get more. They have not upped the basic allotment in 4 years, and the thought is that they will put more money into the pot this time around, and maybe we'll get a little bit of relief on the revenue side. It also made up of district characteristics, student characteristics, because each student is weighted depending on their program. Higher need students or special programs get a weight attached to them, so then that's indexed on that $6,160. Local property taxes and state funding are combined to reach your entitlement, or your glass, if you say that it's not going to be half full and it's not going to overflow. They're going to make sure that it's right where it's supposed to be, where it's equalized across the state. That's where recapture comes in. Once your bucket or your glass overflows, then that money goes back to the state. And it's the tax dollars that go back to the state. We write a check, but really it's just an excess tax that you've collected that then goes back to the state. We are a Chapter 49 district. I guess probably is the way you would term it, because we pay recapture. But we're really sort of call it a gap district, because we get both state money and we pay recapture. A strictly Chapter 49 school district pays recapture to the state and gets no state funding. And an example of that is Highland Park. All their tax money overflows the glass. They've got too much money. They're not going to get any state money, and so then they're going to pay recapture back in that manner. The gap district, such as us, we pay some recapture, We go up after there's a combination of both tax revenue and state revenue, and so we have a smaller recapture payment, but we do receive some state funds. And then the Chapter 48 districts pay no recapture but receive state funding. An example of that is Garland ISD. And I guess the dividing line on all this is what is the wealth per student as it applies to your district. The local tax effort is for school districts is simply property taxes or an ad valorem tax. That's the only way we raise our revenue in taxes. If you're at another tax entity, let's say the city, you'll get a property tax bill from them, but they also get sales tax. Some states have income taxes. That's one of the reasons Texas is probably, you'll see they pay the most property taxes in Texas. Well, for schools, well, it's the only revenue source that we have for other states supplement it in a variety of ways. The appraisal district sets the value of your home. Some folks think the school district's deciding on how much your home's worth and sets the tax rate. That's not true. The appraisal district, an independent body, sets the value of your home or business, and then we simply apply that tax rate once we get the values from the appraisal district. Each year, we adopt two tax rates, one for the M&O or operating, the other one for the interest and sinking, which is the debt, which goes to pay for the buildings that you're trying to, and the capital improvements for your particular district. We'll get into it, I think, in a minute. I'm not sure what all's on this slide presentation, but the maintenance and operation fund is the only one that's subject to recapture. The only thing that you'll have on there, and we'll talk a little bit about golden pennies in a minute, but I&S, one of the advantages of doing capital projects funds, and for a lot of my career, I was in a district. We had a bond election every 4 years. And I'm very appreciative of this group and the participation that you give. You can't have a bond election, you can't have a capital projects program without buy-in from the community. And this is really the first step. Not only does staff have to buy into it, but the community has to buy into it, and you're that connection. And so I always value those that will spend their time to be a part of a community like this. But the money that we're trying to decide on the capital projects is paid back through the interest and sinking. You get to keep 100% of the dollars. So it can be a big benefit. If you got a great capital projects program, you can keep up ongoing buildings, technology, all those things that doesn't drain the M&O fund. You can capitalize them, and you're paying for them from your tax dollars that you get to keep 100% of. Okay, so what is maintenance operation? It's salaries, utilities, it's just general operating expense. Make the correlation with what it is for an average citizen in your own home, which is utilities, car maintenance, cleaning supplies, groceries, all those various things that it takes to operate a home. The interest and sinking fund, it's your capital projects. It can be used for salaries. You can't say pay utilities. You can't pay those everyday expenses. It has to be a capital expenditure. It's sort of like in your home, it'd be your mortgage, your home improvement loan, your car loan, your furniture loan, whatever you can leverage in the way of financing for a capital project. The M&O, this is the biggest thing that has changed since I retired, and I retired in 2015. And they in the old days, in the good old days, you had a compressed tax rate, and then you kept that compressed tax rate, and they changed it only through legislation. But then they got the bright idea, well, wait a minute, some of these districts are getting money off the growth. So here's what we're going to do. We want taxpayers to get a break, which I agree with too. They said, we will take your value, and as your value goes up, we're going to compress your rate every single year. So our tax rate will continue to decline as long as our values are going up. You're not going to get ahead on property value. If the district wants to raise their rate above the compressed rate that they've assigned you, and they tell you what your tax rate is going to be on the compressed rate side. In other words, it's 86 cents this year. We've done 4 golden pennies. I'm gonna talk about the golden pennies in just a minute. And what you end up doing is they will come back, and we've already got an estimate of what our values will go to next year. I already know the tax rate's gonna fall 6 cents. I mean, that's gonna be a given. It's gonna go down 6 cents because they're gonna compress us down with the growth that we've had within the district. Now, the only way that the district can then make some things work, and what a lot of districts have done, the board can take 5 golden pennies, and you get to keep all those pennies within your district. So 5 pennies, you get to keep all the money, just like in the INS fund, but it's in the M&O. The Grapevine Colleyville Board has already approved 4 of those pennies. And I don't know how long it's gonna take, but they're gonna eventually have to get that 5th penny, and they're driving all districts to have a VADER, which is a voter-approved tax election, where you can go out and get 3 more golden pennies, and then 9 copper pennies, which then you get to keep 50% of the money you collect. Now, that's a hard thing to sell within your district, but they have driven districts into a corner, because the only way you can generate additional revenue, understand this, is have more students or have more golden pennies. Because you get to keep those pennies, and as your property values grow, you get to keep each one of those. Each penny's worth about $1.8 million. M&O tax rate, 90 cents, which is the 86 plus the 4. The INS rate's 22, for a total rate of $1.13 per $100 of value. You take your value, you divide by 100, and multiply by your tax rate. You can see the tax rate for the area. I pulled off Carroll, Keller, Northwest, Coppell, and Burtonville. I think the surrounding area. You can tell Grapevine is well below theirs, and it's due to the board being very prudent, looking at their debt, looking at what they can cut, looking at how they can keep taxes minimized. And all I'm saying this, are there any board members here?
Big Richard.
They're very supportive. They're very supportive. What they have done is created the capacity to say, we need a capital projects program. We need to look at golden pennies. There's, I guess you can say, some powder in the gun to be able to accommodate some of the things that you're going to need to do. School district funding, to put it another way, not that we've talked all around it, you have the same number of students, and that's one of the issues here, is that enrollment is flat. I mean, flat. It's been flat for several years. And so, therefore, revenues stayed stagnant. So, but as property values go up, and you have the same number of students, property tax rate is going to go down, as we talked about the compressed rate. Property tax revenue is going to go up, state revenue is going to go down, and they're going to do it through a recapture payment. That's how it works. See how easy that is? Okay. We do not benefit, and I know this is repetitious, but it's really a key point to understand when you're talking about school finance. We do not benefit as a school district from property value growth other than on the debt side. And just a few golden pennies. Funding increases when your student numbers increase. They're paying you per student. The bond initiatives, 93, 98, you can see how those are staggered. You can see they're going up. I'll tell you right now, I had some discussions with another school district. They're in a building program. They're building a high school, and I'm like, holy cow, that's nearly as big as any of the bond issues that elections I had in Plano. I mean, it was just amazing the cost of buildings these days, and the type of building programs and what it takes to fund these days. There's been some great savings as far as debt management practices. The top part of this graph, I hope you can see it, and it'll be online where you can really get your glasses on it. But they've done some refunding, and it's just like your mortgage. If rates go down, hey, let's refund. Now, a lot of people think, well, maybe it's gonna be like my house. It's got 20 years left, I'm gonna refinance at a lower rate and take it on out 30. Schools don't do it that way. When they refinance, they'll go to a lower rate, they'll keep the payment schedule, the life of the bond the same. So they're not trying to extend that debt. They're simply trying to save money on the rate. On this one, it's $65 million they've saved in refundings because of the rate changes on those buildings, and we'll look at an amortization schedule in just a minute. And then they prepaid bonds. Now, I'll tell you, that's a little bit rare, is they paid down their debt, saved on the interest. They redeemed, we've redeemed $66 million since it has started been using that particular practice. So a total of $118 million in savings. Now that's real money. That's real savings that you've had managing your debt. They've added this, and I'll just tell you, I sort of scraped this off our financial advisor who had done a little bit of analysis of debt, and he will be here at some point to get really drilled down about debt. So at times, variable rate bonds are blended in with your normal bond issues. It's a variable rate that you have to reset. Sometimes you take a gamble on that because you reset it every 1, 2, or 3 years. You pick the level and the tighter it is, and you look at the bond rates that you do. But there's all districts do a little bit of variable bonds, and they've saved a little bit of money on being able to manage that part. This is the debt schedule. You can see it's gone from $1.39 back in 16-17 down to $1.13. Those jumps have been due to the compression, along with the board lowering the INS rate, and you'll know why they lowered it. Debt's going down, and that's because you can tell from the issuance that you've had spread over a length of time. This isn't my number, but sounds pretty good. The repayment period on a bond, for every dollar you borrow, you'll be paying 45 cents in interest. On a 30-year mortgage, when you borrow a dollar, you're usually paying 92 cents. It sort of depends on the vehicle that you take in managing that debt and how you're going to manage that bond that you're going to issue. But I'll leave that up to Josh. Would be okay to run that down for you. This is, I believe, the last slide. This is letting you know you don't just buy and then try to pay for it after it's useful. I mean, that's not very good management to buy a bunch of things that have a useful life that's shorter. So you're very careful to make sure things like software, computer equipment have a 5-year life. You want all that debt paid off when their useful life's over. Furniture is 10, buses are 10, although, you know, most districts run their buses 15, 16, 17 years. Athletic turf, 10 years. New school buildings, infrastructure, land, you pay it off over 25 years. We had a standard practice that we had a complete renovation of schools every 25 years. It was very good because it just revitalizes that particular part of your district and gives kids a good learning setting and environment. And with that, did I come in under 20?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna make sure I understand this, just so I can, for my own peace of mind. So when you said that we don't benefit, the district doesn't benefit by property value growth, right?
Correct.
But our property values are growing.
Right.
To the point where no people can move in because they can't afford it, and so then we can't have new families come in.
Right.
So we're kind of
In a box.
stuck. Okay.
Good thought. It's a real issue here, it's a real issue in Southland.
Quick question for you. Is the amount that every district is funded per student the same?
Yes, they're all assigned equal weights and they're in equal dollars from the state.
So if I were to look at a neighboring district and ask how much they're getting for their average daily attendance, it would be the same 6,000 and whatever you,
Well, if they had the same tax rate, so, you know, the combination of your tax rate, really property value probably wouldn't enter into it. It would be their equalized wealth level, it'd be their
programs.
their program costs.
Demographics.
And a lot of districts are getting smart, they're driving programs that drive money. I mean, there's certain programs that drive money, so they drive those programs. So, yeah, it'd be sort of tough to do. I think you could probably make it work if you back out some variables.
All right, I know we had a couple of questions over here. Michael?
So the savings you've made from paying off bond packages early or restructuring, those dollars don't get to go into the M&O budget, do they?
No,
Oh,
no, they're gone, but it's good savings, yes.
I know we've talked before about students who need special services,
Right.
and I think the number was something like
Absolutely.
half or
Yeah.
something like that. They get more state.
Oh, they get a lot more. Special need kids, it is a combination of both local effort, federal effort, state effort. So and that's one of the things, if you applied a point blank number to the entire district, that would play a big part of it.
So a district that more aggressively identifies dyslexic kids early on isn't being punished, they're getting extra funding.
They're getting that extra funding, but let's don't be confused. The special program cost and the resources that you put in to supply their particular needs, that you should be spending what you get. And so that's the whole name of the game. Yeah, it's a not special education isn't a for-profit deal.
Yeah. One more right here, Jeff.
Okay, so you mentioned that if we pay off debt early, that money doesn't go to the M&O. So if we pay off debt early, does that money just get recaptured?
No, there's no recapture on the money that you pay off the debt on. What happens is you can lower your debt service rate.
Okay. And
So-
if increasing property values don't benefit the district,
Right.
why are we not lowering property taxes more? Is there a limit to how low we
Good,
go?
I'm glad you said that because I was thinking I needed to say something about that and then it lost it. The state is very clever about this. You gotta tax up to your compressed limit or you don't get funded, they penalize you even more. That's why Highland Park, people say, why didn't Highland Park just become an independent, their own school district? Well, number one, they'd lose their taxing capacity. And so therefore they wouldn't have all their source of income unless their taxpayers were generous enough just to give it to them. So, but they've got it figured out. They're smarter than a lot of people.
With rising interest rates, how's that going to affect this model?
Okay, yeah, with rising interest rates, yeah, that could be a problem. Bonds are interesting because sometimes when the stock market goes one way, the bond market should respond and be, like a flight to safety. So you can get some benefit from that, but it's all about timing. And the bonds market is cyclical. It'll run its cycle and maybe they'll come back. But you do strategize on the timing of what you want to do and when rates are good to do. Go out. Yes.
So I know when I hear about bond packages, there's usually a number thrown out there about the average or expected in the tax rate.
Right. That'll be calculated.
Yeah, so there was a really cool graph up there of past bond elections and
Right.
totally now. Can we get the number that was out there at the time of those elections for the expected impact?
Right.
And then the actual impact?
Yeah, I would say that the district would simply, along with the financial advisor, figure out those calculations, project property value growth, sort of, in other words, a good faith effort. I mean, the district's gotta have a good faith effort to the community. This is what's gonna cost, are you willing to do it?
And it's, I realize it's complicated, but I'd just be curious to know what voters heard before, and then what actually happened. So expected.
I've seen that play out. They're usually very conservative on those estimates. I would be shocked if it didn't come in well below that. Now property values have really risen over the last 20 years. So, but I would say that they hit all their targets. I mean, it's tough to get one done if you haven't been.
Sure, because if all the savings from the things they've done to save money, and the rate wouldn't rise as much as they.
Right.
expected.
Yeah, you know, and I think it comes back to the issue deal. I mean, you got a school board, when you issue the bonds, they do a bond order. They have to have some estimations on what it's gonna do. They gotta make sure that they're gonna stay within the scope of what they've told the taxpayers. I haven't seen I haven't seen any district that's really been shot out of the water because they just went out and did what they wanted to do once the voters decided they wanted to. I mean, whether you know it or not, you got a lot of leverage, okay? So.
If you could snap your fingers right now, funding would be based upon enrollment instead of attendance, what would that do to your district's bottom line?
If they gave you more money, it would be very helpful. Now, membership and enrollment's flat too. I mean, attendance has been pretty consistent as far as the number of kids that come based on enrollment. If they gave you more money for enrollment, yeah, you'd take that in a heartbeat. My feeling is if they gave it based on enrollment, we run a high attendance level, the same amount of money going to all schools. Dallas, Houston, Austin, they make out like bandits because their attendance rate is so low. And so, you know, you gotta be careful, you know, what are you gonna give us and how are you gonna fund it?
How do vouchers factor in all of that?
You're not gonna get me to. Okay. I'm retired. Vote your conscience always.
To your question? Sort of. All right. Well, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. Is it doing it again? Richard, thank you for being here and thank you for helping us understand. That's a ways off, yes. Thank you, Chrissy. Have a good evening. All right, next up is going to be, we're going to really switch gears here. We're going to get out of finance and we're going to start working a little bit on the facility assessment that's going to be coming to you. And so David Gustav is here to kind of explain to you what you're going to be receiving next week. Dave?
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. So first off, before I go through any of these slides, I just want to let you know, we'll talk with the architects. We've been in business for 57 years, and all we do is education. That's all we're focused on. We have walked through and done facility assessments for hundreds and if not thousands of schools throughout the years that we've been in existence. And I just want to preface this by saying that Grapevine Colleyville ISD is probably one of the best that we have seen in the ability to maintain their facilities with the funding that they have available. So they just do a fantastic job, and I want to preface that because when you start to look at this, it's ugly. It's a little messy. It's unveiling a lot of things that you don't really want to see, but Grapevine Colleyville does a fantastic job with the money that they have available. And I can promise you that Ramon did not pay me to say that. Did not. So, just what is a facility assessment? Well, this is a real long and wordy explanation of what a facilities assessment is based on an ASTM standard, it's American Society of Testing of Materials, and they have guidelines for how they review facilities. And there's a description here of how they were evaluated by reviewing the condition of assigned buildings and site elements on campus, building components. They did do a cost analysis, and I'm going to explain that a little bit more detail further on in here. And they did do a recommendation of the order of importance for that, and that is strictly a recommendation based on their observation. You guys are going to be diving into this much deeper and working through that prioritization based on your analysis as well. And then, there is a calculation, the appropriate replacement reserve for the next 15 years. So they have tried to identify what things that you probably should put in for that needs to be done like every year, every other year, every third year, and those are identified in this facilities assessment list too. So, like Paula had said in our last meeting, these are the facilities that we have done the assessment on. It's 3.2 million square feet. It was a lot of reviewing, a lot of looking at everything within these facilities. We had 10 to 15 assessment professionals that walked each site, and it was a visual observation of the existing conditions. We did not do any destructive testing. We did not do any destructive unveiling of or peeling back of the roofs or tearing off of walls to look and see what's inside of it. It was a visual observation without destructive testing. There were architects, mechanical engineers, electrical, plumbing, kitchen consultants, roofing. We had a registered accessibility specialist review everything, and we also looked at the playgrounds. And I'm going to give you an example. This is kind of the format and the output that is provided and what you're going to see in detail in the next meeting. You're going to all have the full printout of this document, but this is going to kind of give you an example of what's in the content. So each one has a kind of a cover page. It has a summary of the facility, of when it was built, the type of roof, structure, those types of things. It's high level. And then there are narratives. There's 11 sections of narratives per school based on the observations that the facility assessment folks did. Okay? So then here's an example of one of those sections. I pulled one of them from Bear Creek Elementary, the roofing system. It has a description of the type of roof, what additions that were done, the type of parapet walls, and the type of flashing and copings and technical information about the makeup of that roof. And then there are observations, just some observations that they have noted, and those are the types of things that that they have identified, and they have tried to put those together and identify the priority of those and the cost, the rough order cost on that, or the ROM cost. And like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about that in a minute. So then they provided some photographs of the deficiencies, some of the things with regard to and you've seen some of these photographs or some of these things that Paula had noted in the last meeting as well. Just some things that need to be addressed and looked at. Pretty straightforward. And then they provided, like I said, a rough estimated cost there. And that cost is the cost of the work, only the cost of the work in today's dollars. There's no escalation, there's no contractor general conditions, it's just the cost of work to perform those activities that are noted there. You'll see that in the report, and then this information is extracted, and we'll talk a little bit about the master spreadsheet that we're putting together, and I have an example of that here in a minute as well. Okay, so y'all were listening in on the previous 4 meetings, and there were department heads that were here, and they presented their state of their department and identified some things there that they felt like could be addressed and might need attention in the next few years. And you got a kind of a high level idea of what their concerns are. And while they were doing that, they were providing us with a very detailed list of deficiencies and items of need and those types of things. And this is a sample of the generated list from that. There's a detailed description there. There's a priority again where they identified what they feel like the priority is, and that's all that is a suggestion of priority. That's something that you guys will work through in more detail and prioritize in the end. So this is done for every school, and there are, the elementary schools might be 150 items, the middle schools might be 250, and the high schools might be 300 to 400 items. So what we've done is, and you'll see the color coding here, what we've done is started to try to pull these apart and put these in subcommittee buckets, subcommittee items. And what the goal is to try to get these items, the number and quantity of these items, try to get them equal. You'll see that the way these are described in some of these, they can be described, or they can be put into different buckets or different categories or different subcommittees. So the way they're worded and the way they are done, we're trying to do our best to try to make them, put them, they're very obvious, some of them, but the gray area ones, we may have to move those into a different subcommittee to try to equal them out so you all have about the same amount of work to do without overwhelming one group than the other, okay? Okay, and then here, what I wanted to show here is an example of what you will start to try to look at and to digest in the next meeting. You will have this type of information provided. You'll be able to look and see, and this is like I said, this is one from the transportation group, the list of buses and light vehicles that are on the list. Like I said, this is only a quarter of ones that are presented. So this was 15, I think it was 45 in this whole list that you'll actually have to go into detail and look at. But you'll have to look at these. You'll be able to try to ask questions, try to talk amongst your group about them, and then you'll have to prioritize these requests. That's an example of some of the information that you're going to be looking at in the next meeting. I wanted to cover a little bit, or just go over some of the things that you'll have to, that are out there that are of consideration. We're trying not to have this committee deal a whole lot, or try to think a whole lot about cost, because we want you guys to focus on the needs and the prioritization of those needs. But we all know that we have to have an idea of some of these costs. So when this deficiency report is given to you, there will be a number at the bottom of that spreadsheet, and that number will be the cost. I got ahead of myself. Let me just go through some of these first few bullet items here before I talk about the other ones. But like I said, the inflationary trend over the last 2 years has been 22%. Everybody has gone through it. In the construction industry, it's just been overwhelming about how much costs have gone through the roof, and the availability of certain materials is the other really difficult and hard thing to deal with. Is you may have the product, but you can't get it for 30 weeks. Everything except for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing is returning to close to pre-pandemic costs. The MVP costs continue to change daily, and there are lead times of over 12 months. Electrical switchgear, for instance, you've got a 30-week lead time on some of those things, and we will come across things almost daily to where the contractor will get a phone call that says, I can't get that roof insulation for 18 weeks. And it's just overwhelming. We've never had to deal with that in the industry, but it's happening daily. It's getting better, but it's still there. So I just wanted to point that out. We all know the costs of the schools and costs of everything's gone up. This is some examples of elementary, middle, and high school cost per square foot. And that's of new facilities, so that's not renovations, but those are big numbers. Those are numbers that we haven't experienced in our industry for forever. Okay, so now I can get back to the bullets here. So the numbers that are identified in that efficiency report is the wrong cost. That's the rough order of magnitude cost. That's the cost in today's dollars. That is the cost that they have provided based on the information that they have. It's not a bid, it's really just the best information that they can give everybody here with regard to the cost. So everybody has to keep that in mind because we're talking about projects that are 3, 4, 5 years out. So it's a number, it's something to look at, but we'll have to really dig deep later on to get in the bond committee meetings, they'll talk much more about detailed conversations about cost. So, and then the LRP consensus list presented by the bond committee, when we present this LRP consensus list, it will have all the refined costs in it. It'll have the ROM cost, it'll have escalation costs, it'll have general conditions, and so on and so forth. So that information will be provided to the bond committee. So I know I ran through that very quickly, but I just wanted to offer up if there's any questions, comments.
What was the LRPC? What did that stand for?
The Long Range Planning Committee? Yes.
This group right here. So with that, Leslie's going to bring up the next presentation, and we're going to introduce Paul Thompson again from Huckabee. Thank you, David. More information will be coming from that. In the interest of time, because we did lose a little bit up at the front of the meeting, I'm going to skip over the agenda item that mentions just subcommittee chairs and that, and we'll take care of that next time, so that we can get going with Paul's presentation and the activity that we definitely need you to weigh in on, because it carries over into everything else you're going to do. It sounds like I'm going to be buying a new laptop.
But is it in the budget?
It is not. Anything you give us.
Must be more than 5 years.
That's right, it has to be over 5 years old. We won't have any consideration for that.
It'll cost you one golden penny.
Yeah.
Well, Paul?
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. My name is Paul Thompson. I am a principal architect at Huckabee Architects. I'm also the Fort Worth office director, so it's my honor to be here. I wanted to be here with you guys this evening, really just kind of reiterate what David shared with you guys about just the quality of this district. We get to see millions of square feet of facilities across the state. Our office expands quite a bit of area across the state, so we're not kidding when we say that you guys do a really good job with the funds that you have and are doing good things with that. This is going to come as a huge shock to everyone in the room, but we always see this in every one of those districts. There's always more needs than there are funds available, and that's the case. When, as David explained, when we do a deep dive facilities assessment, there are thousands of items, okay? We're not going to request the aging committee over here to have 10,000 items of stuff to deal with, and you guys have 2 or 3 things to deal with. So we've devised with the district a framework of how we're going to work with you guys and how you're going to be able to help us make decisions and provide information that the district can make informed decisions with later. Okay? So as I mentioned, you're going to have this framework. You're going to have an equal number of things to contend with. I'm sorry, I keep moving this away from my face. But it's essentially what we're trying to do is you're each going to be looking at different things, different lenses. We're going to break that up for you. But we're trying to level the playing field, so to speak. So we're going to have very comprehensive evaluation of each project. We're going to create kind of a project profile sheet for you, if you will, that'll be on your table, and with the line item that you're going to discuss amongst yourself in various groups for your various lenses that you're looking through. It's going to try to establish a very consistent series of factors. The activity that we're going to work on in a minute is you guys get to weigh in on what those factors are and the value and the weight that we're going to put on them that is going to really derive some empirical data. We're trying to take the subjectiveness, if you will, and some of the emotion of the decision makings, and as fair comparison, that's what it's talking about. It's really hard to compare different needs for different departments across various campuses and do that fairly. So this will kind of level the playing field and give us a way to do that. And at the end of the day, you guys are going to get, you know, we're going to present that in a list format for you guys. We're going to weigh in on whether or not that's what you want to do, if you want to discuss moving some stuff around or you know, making some unique decisions. We're going to have that opportunity at the end of the project, or at the end of our meetings. And we're basically just developing, we're assisting and advising the district on this information. They're going to take those next steps. That bond planning committee, if it gets formed, they're going to wrestle with their appetite for, you know, what that bond value is and how many of these things, based on the rough order of magnitude, that we can get down and get to. So what we're going to ask you to do tonight, this is just kind of a representative graphic here, so we actually have 5 factors you're going to consider. We're going to weight each of those each one of those factors. And we're going to do this, that way it levels the playing field. So each of you are looking at a card, you're going to be looking at things like the benefits to students, et cetera. And so we've got on the easels around the room right now those that we're going to ask you here in a minute to get up and help us with an exercise. At the end of the day, this is what we're working towards. Okay, this is again just a representation. This is 4 factors and the weighted value. So we're going to have a description of what that project is. Maybe replace the gym floor, for example, at a particular campus. It may be an addition of a program or something like that. Whatever that element is for each of your groups, you're going to score that benefit to students 40% every time, whatever that is. And you're going to provide the number 0 to 5. 5 is, yep, I love that idea, we gotta do that. 0 is, heck no, no way. So, you know, you get the point. And we're going to have across the board some empirical data here to tell us, hey, this is where it ranks. And we're gonna talk about that and see if we agree with just that raw data. This is intentionally blurry on you guys. This is someone else's that we've done in another district, but this is just kind of a peek at the final product, okay? So what we're gonna do is ignore, I mean, the color codings here matter to that group, so you guys have different color coding. But we're just figuring out a way to rank these things, 1 to 50 or 70,000 or whatever we're dealing with, okay? And then again, we're gonna put this in front of you. You guys are gonna tell us if you agree with that, yes or no. And then the next committee is gonna validate that for us, and we're free to make changes in the district and make suggestions to that as well. Okay? So we are in the activity. So you guys excited? Y'all ready to get moving? Get working again? Okay. So here's what we're gonna do.
Can everybody hear him? Gotta move that mic up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm a hand off. Okay, so the hot box activity, I'm sure you've done this a million times. Okay. What we're gonna ask you to do is we have easels around the room with 5 factors. Okay. You guys are going to get dots to get up and then ask you to talk about these things. They're also printed on the sheets that you have in front of each of you. And you have 1 dot for each color. Actually, we went to the Office Depot, they didn't have black, so we got navy blue, so that's our black, just for that piece. And we are just recommending these valuations, okay, 30, 25, 20, 15, and 10. We've got 5 factors that we've kind of worked with the district. I want you guys to look at those things, consider those things. If you want to alter any of the verbiage, if you want to change a factor, to weigh in on the percentages, anything that you want to suggest, we'd love for you to write that down on the easel to the right of the factor, okay? And then after you discuss that and you're ready to get up and make your selections, I want you to just place your dot on the paper, okay, next to the category. And we're gonna read off where these categories are so to help you know where they are in the room, okay? This one here is urgency of need, okay?
This one is benefit to community, benefit to community.
We got value in this corner.
Benefit to students?
Okay.
Is this another one right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Experience.
Okay, so we spread them around so you guys aren't all congregated at, one in that. So I'm gonna ask if you have any questions, any comments before we get going, and then basically it's up to you guys. You're all going to discuss these at the table, and then whenever you're ready to go make your vote, you're gonna get up and go make your vote. Does anyone have any questions on the process? Or for me, or Paula, or?
Vote as an individual.
You vote as an individual, but you're free to talk, and we want you guys to have kind of a collective discussion. And if there's something that hey, look, this factor, we should take that off, or you want to add something, you want to change verbiage, any of that stuff, just write that down for us. We're gonna talk about that as a group here today.
So Caleb, about how much time do we have for them to discuss before they need to kind of get up and start placing their dots? About 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
All right.
Okay, ready, go.
Sorry.
What's the question?
Do we have to put it
I think so.
But if you want to suggest something to change
So like
that,
if I don't want to do anything to benefit students,
right, you could say
I
that.
still have to put a dot on there?
You can make it 10%. You can make it, like, recommendation like it's gonna be dollars. You can make it, change it. It's written out on the board too.
And that's the topic really disruptive to student learning. And so it is sort of related
Yeah, I'm glad I was put on this committee. I agree with that. I just think that my campus, it's not like your home. You have sewer issues, you have slap leaks, you have something going on, your roof needs to be replaced. Yeah, I'd love to have a pool. I need to take care of the house first. There's needs like emergency.
and it's like they're safer. Will this project help me learn safer? But then you've also got over here disruptive. So it's hard to like distinguish.
Well, maybe it may not.
No auction of
Not just some companies. What's the real impact it's having?
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. It's probably been as part of the 2016 bond program. So we probably I started putting it in 19 maybe. I think that's when we started. Yeah.
Y'all already started
Yeah.
your assessments, you've already done the walkthrough.
Always different.
So you've already done all the line items.
Paint the poles don't work. They don't. Yeah, exactly. Because like manhole, they don't work because it's such a big room, but it's fine. So exactly. Exactly. Every people always get you on.
That's why we don't want you guys to really consider
Yeah. They should. I'm going to verify with them here tomorrow. We'll be in our collaboration room, which has the board and everything.
that value is true value is what we're talking about dollars and cents necessarily. Once you kind of interpret that a little bit differently, the energy efficiency and stuff. But don't get bogged down too much. I'm just trying to kind of take the cost out. And the other thing is, for you guys, there's a lot of stuff, all of us speak this in the next meeting, that like let's pick on air conditioning. Y'all know what March for okay. Well, you can't get that stuff. You guys have a ton of air conditioning to operate. That's a huge high priority up here in Kansas and Manitoba stuff. That if we let you guys interpret that or figure that out, you may say, well, that's not the highest priority, just because you don't understand it. Right? So to prevent that, you really make the tax dollars as efficient as possible. Additionally, you want to take a lot of that stuff off your plate, and they've already figured prioritize that for you. At the end of the day, next week, we're going to ask you to do the district has prioritized as a 5.0 top of the list. But we're not going to put a dollar sign next to it. To whatever. You guys have prioritized that the bond committee needs to go out and grab. For For example, if you passed a $100 million bond and you got $700 million worth of capital improvements, which is like, you're gonna have to cut that number down, and you've got other stuff to do. You may have 70, you know.
Calvin tells me you have 6 minutes left.
Worth of stuff, it's not capital improvements, that leaves you $30 million.
10. You said
We
6.
have to decide what $30 million is the highest priority. That should be the district, that should be the guys changing out those air conditioners or the roof warranties that are expired, and those type of things. But there's aging things that we're sprinkling about every group, okay? Because, you know, there's a lot of them. And there's some things that aren't required, okay? There's things like cosmetic things, that are aesthetic things, we want you guys to weigh in. So did that answer your question? Yes, sir. Okay, you bet, thank you. Anyone else have any questions based on that? You bet. Can someone advocate for benefit to community?
I will say that as a community representative, I work for the Grapevine Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here representing some of the business community. So, right, I will say, you're gonna go out to voters and ask them to approve this bond package, so if there's not some level of community buy-in, then there is that risk of the bond not passing. So that needs to be some consideration taken into account. That being said, I don't think anybody that is thinking about it is going to say, I want to sacrifice student learning just for community buy-in. But it is something that needs to be taken into consideration. That's what we're going to find out. So like,
Yeah, to explain what the value break it down and make sure they right.
All my kids have good experience, I'm sure. It's like, they can have on the wall, what's going to be safe. Kind of look at that now. It's kind of, you know, it's being there kind of.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like yeah, that's hard.
Here you go.
All right, we have voting going on. Everybody, we got about 5 minutes. 5 minutes for everybody to wrap up. Remember, you can add comments if you need to write anything down or add adjacent to where you're sticking your dots. And remember, we also have some parking right over here.
I wasn't ready. We should put like, what is that game we play with the limbo? Yeah. I should have.
But mom was like,
Oh, every day of our lives.
yeah.
There you go. There you go. So you have to think about it for a minute. Oh, not yet. That's to come.
You haven't put your stickers up yet.
Holding your jocks close to the bed.
Oh, okay.
Holding your jocks close to the bed.
Most of them have lots of rainbow colors, except the one born's almost all blue. You know, that's the value, the benefit to the community.
Jim Bacon. Well, good to see you, bud. Yeah, that's the way. You're with the district or what? What do you do?
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, just out of the fire.
That was on her
We've got about 2 minutes. Take the clothes out, like. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
The original.
That's the original. That's right. Yeah.
Welcome back.
Do me a favor and raise your hand if you still have not put your dots out. We got a couple more. We got about a minute to wrap up, so while you're placing your dots, I'm just gonna go table by table and see if you guys have anything you want to share. So, when you guys are talking through, you have anything that stood out? Writing anything. Share.
All right, I have one comment under the factor of experience. The first bullet point says, will the project provide equitable learning environments across district campuses? I think it should be something to the effect of similar learning experiences.
All right, we'll add that. That was part of the presentation last time where we talked about parity or similar experiences. It's a good point. Anybody get caught up on the titles, like benefit to students?
We said we feel like all of this is beneficial to students, and that a lot of them cross over a lot of these categories.
Because they're indirect benefit, typically speaking. Okay? What else?
Anyone over here have
The big group.
a question or anything?
We had a big discussion of benefit to community, and is that really something that needs to be put above any of those other four things? Or does it need to be retitled to something different so that way, to kind of have a better understanding of what that lens is supposed to be?
So if you've got ideas on how to retitle these things, we are open to it, because it really was about focusing on the questions underneath, right? And you have to sit there and you have to kind of absorb that for a moment to see what it is that each of those bullets are talking about. You know, there's one that it's a bullet I probably would move under a different heading even. So, and then there's somebody who suggested that maybe we should just have 4 factors instead of 5. And that might be something you want to take into consideration. Paul's going to address that possibly here in some of his questions. But this work basically translates into how you're going to evaluate all of those line items that come to you. So it's important. We'll get a chance to review it again a little bit next time. But this is kind of an important first step for you so that you have a rubric with which to grade.
And that's what we're trying to do, just take that subjectivity, some of that off the table for you guys to try to make it, at the end of the day, I didn't put that bullet up there, but, efficiency of your time is also, should be one of those high considerations of why we're doing the framework that we are. There's a lot of stuff, if we just gave it to you and said, hey, get at it, I might spend a whole night talking about one item on one campus. So we're trying to do kind of the speed dating, if you will, of getting through this and just making it manageable for you guys, really just to respect your time. So we are going around trying to do a tally to give you some information. We got 5 minutes. So do we have a number? We haven't broken down yet?
Well, overall, or just the individual?
Yeah, do we know what?
Is that the same as this?
No, this.
That's just this.
Okay, yeah, so go
Correct.
ahead and just get all the numbers and let's do a tally of that. We're gonna do the quick math for you, and tell you which is ranked highest. I mean, I guess by the eyeball test, I'd say that's probably.
These two are tied.
They're tied.
Yes, urgency of need and benefit to students both had 18.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So benefit to students and urgency of need both have the same number. So you guys, anybody want to make an argument for why one might want to be ranked higher than the other? And let's just get some kind of collective wisdom amongst the group and let's decide if we need to bump one up by a rate point.
Amy?
I'll argue that.
Yes, ma'am.
Take the mic.
Right, so I think our table saw it as, and especially me as a nurse, I saw it as, when you're looking at CPR, you're looking at, is the scene safe? Can I go in to help? Can I go in to benefit? And if that scene is not safe, if you don't have mechanical, electrical, kitchen fires and everything else taken care of, then the scene is not safe and the students are not going to benefit. The other thing is, if you don't do some things now, you're going to cost more in the future, which is not going to benefit those kids. And you're looking at, like I remember Canon, like tripping hazards, like different levels of floors and like all these things that actually can harm children as a risk management type situation. And so you really have to address the urgent needs that when we saw those pictures, I was like, that's not small potatoes. That has to be taken care of in order for our children to feel safe at school and in order for them to benefit from what programs and systems we already have in place, which are great teachers and everything else. So that's why we would choose, or most of us, I think, it was all personal choices, but a lot of us chose the red dot for the...
For experience?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Urgency.
Urgency was
Don't
more of our
urgency
red
on
dots. Yeah.
Urgency of
Like go
need
team, red dots, urgency.
would have ranked higher, a little bit higher than benefit to students.
Yes.
It all benefits the kids, and I got hung up on that title. So,
the splitting hairs on some of these are subtle differences, but does anybody else have a thought about that?
When we looked at benefit students and urgency of need, we said, really, we could go one or two either way. But the further I think we looked into it, we realized urgency of need, everything under there could fall under a benefit to the student. And so that's why we kind of lean toward benefit student number one. Really, number one, number two, we could see it either way, but that's why we went with benefit number one.
Anyone else have comment, question about that?
If those two were tied, how did the others come out?
Or they just tied from a red perspective, so it looks like they're more green. Benefits students versus.
Ron, where's the gap?
We've got 18 reds, 15 green, 3 yellow, one blue, and 1 navy.
I think the weighted average would be more for that one.
We've got 15 green over here and 13 over here. Only 6 green over here.
You guys really made this messy.
I thought urgency of need, I thought some of the projects, the school, like you were saying, the school district has already weighted some of them as really have to get done, there's no choice. Like you said, the air conditioner, refrigerant. So that urgency of need is obviously off the chart, so we don't have to worry about it, it's already there. So that's why some people might think, well, what projects after that have immediate urgency of need?
Oh, you might be surprised.
Let me show that example from the room. So,
Yeah, because we're not going to put everything on that predetermined list. There'd be no purpose of having a committee, now or in the future. I mean, I could load that thing up tomorrow, right? And it'd exceed our bonding capacity, and so could Kyle for that matter. He probably could outspend me. So, no, you guys are going to wrestle with it. And so there will be some absolutes like the refrigerant, but then it becomes your work.
I was just gonna say, do we have to have these be different? Could they be equal weight? Because it seems like that's what the votes want.
we can talk about that. So again, part of this drill down is to determine, hey, we agree with all of these in that order and the valuation that we put on it. So if you guys want to make these two equal in valuation, we can do that.
Here, give him the mic.
I was gonna say, it looks like benefit to community was, unless I'm looking at the dots. It looks like benefit to community, unless I'm looking at the dots, was very clearly the last. And so we could always just take 5% from the black dot, and then that would be 30, 30, 20, 15, 5. If that was clearly the last choice for.
Well, they don't.
Oh, not clear, sorry, I could, like, from here, it looks like this one had the most black dots.
That is correct.
So anyway, that was like, that lets the ones that were clearly the most important have a little bit more weight, and ones that was lesser important, and most people have a little bit less weight.
So it sounds like we have an order from the bottom up, least, next least, and so forth, right? I don't know if the least is so low that it really just shouldn't even be a factor anymore.
Agreed.
Is there one? Which one? Benefit to community, do those things just go away, or you want to fold them in under something else?
Just make it 5%.
I think it's 5%.
I think it needs to stay. It could be a smaller percentage.
Okay, all right. So then really what you're left with is really deciding on the top two. And I do think that it's important that they have some differentiation because of how you'll use them to grade projects in the future. And right now that may not make entire sense. I don't know if you could give a good illustration of what that would do.
So at the end of the day, it's really just trying to give you multiple lenses to score something, if you think of it that way. So if you consider each one of those bullet points, each one of those items, and again, there's some subtle differences, there's some crossover, there should be really on these things. So as you're providing that score 0 to 5, you're leaning one way or the other. You might have 2 5s in a row or something on that. There may be something else like value or benefit to community that you rate really low, okay, 1.4 or whatever. At the end of the day, that's going to be averaged together to give you that number, and that's really kind of how we're going to make the distinction between things that are very hard to compare otherwise in our experience. Yes, ma'am.
I think for me, now to Amy's point, she can convince anyone of anything to do anything. But but it feels like by saying urgency of need is number one, that we're saying buildings are more important than students. When, in my mind, if this is a community of students and families, then students should come first because it's education. That's just my struggle, that putting need first.
Sorry.
It's very hard when you're in the business we're in to not, quote, put students first, right? We realize, I think everybody in the room recognizes that everything on the list benefits students directly or indirectly in some fashion. And I think that's why I struggled with that title when I looked at this, and I probably would have changed that title at some point along, just for my own comfort level, right? So that too is something you can do, but some variation is important, and I'll give you a really just mundane example. Maybe there's 2 items on a list to replace flooring in a particular room. One of them is driven by the fact that it is full of mold. The carpet's just nasty, filthy. And in the other room, it's an aesthetic issue. Now you're going to grade the value of those 2 things. Obviously, you're going to give a lot of priority to the carpet that needs to go. And this one, when you see all the trillions of things, may not be possible. Or in your world, because you're not cutting anything at this point just yet, you're really saying, okay, it's really low priority. It's going to be down here with next to no points whatsoever as we use this grading rubric. So if whatever it is at the top, you give it a 5, that's obviously going to carry a lot more weight compared to the other flooring project that really gets a score of a 1 or a 0. Does that make sense? A little bit more? Not really. Maybe? Okay. All right. Well, I got a lot of this going the other way. Okay.
But would it be benefit to students or urgency of need? What would the mold fit under?
What would the mold fit under? Can I borrow your sheet? It's been a while.
That's what I'm saying, like, what does the mold fit under?
Will this project help make the learning environment safer and or more comfortable? Okay, that's benefit to students.
But it also would address the current condition that is disruptive to student learning because they're having reactions to the mold and having.
Yes,
So they get a 5.
it's both.
Right.
I knew that.
I think,
Is there a differentiation later in the list of questions?
see, I think one of the things you're getting at too is, I think the titles are actually perfect. So whoever did that, good job. But you're talking about need versus benefit.
There is a difference.
So,
Either way, it sounds like those things that fit under urgency of need or benefit to students are going to get graded higher than some of the other things when you're really into the nitty gritty. John?
What if we rank benefit of students number 1, urgency number 2, put them really close, like 30, 28? There's really no difference except when you get down to the situation you're talking about, and it would shake out. Or 28, 30. But what if we just put them so close that they're nearly the same? So we have some differentiation.
It will work. It will work. There will be shades of gray in everything you do.
rock, paper, scissors.
Can you live with that? And then there's that. I literally, the last committee, I had people that went across the room to each other to try to play, let's make a deal. I'll give your thing this many points, you give my thing that many points. We can let that go on for a little bit, but not forever, because we would have never gotten anywhere. Can we live with the idea that one is 30 and the other's 28?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Thumbs up?
Either one is fine.
I need to count thumbs? Dwight, will you count the thumbs? We will lower benefit to community. What does consensus mean in this group? Whole group. What do we need? You're 50 voting people. You're not all here. More than half of who's here is done. Great, because we are past time.
Thank you so much, guys. This is going to help us.
Wait, hold on. We decide which one is
Mr. Landauer.
You got that right there.
I'm gonna arm wrestle Amy to decide if it's urgency of need or benefits that gets the 30%. No, he has a valid question. Which one's getting 30 and which one's getting 28? Jeff, did you make a motion? Jeff made a motion for students.
I second Jeff.
You second Jeff? All right, let's see.
What's the motion?
Benefit to students at 30% because urgency of need would be 28%.
Aye. All those in favor say aye.
I think you better raise your hands this time. Wait a minute. Who couldn't hear? All right. Between benefit to students and urgency of need, the motion is benefit to students ranks 30%, urgency of need would be 28%. Those in favor, raise your hand. Who's counting? Oh my God! I just won the wrestling match. Let's count. Who's counting? Is your hand up, Amy? What's the count?
Can you make it without me?
So urgency is number one.
The other one would be.
There's shades of gray to everything.
There is. That right. Mr. Megan.
So if you add up the percentage points, urgency is at 1,000. And benefit to students is 970.
Urgency one.
All right, so the next motion is urgency of need is 30%, benefit to students is 28%. We won't let anybody see your sheets. And Caitlin's not videoing. Raise your hand if you agree with urgency of need. Wow, that whole table. And this table. All right, count up. I'm gonna retitle it urgency of need for the benefit of students. It's now 58%. All right, what was the count? You know, I really thought we'd be done by May, but I'm not so sure anymore.
Joe's right, we're simply talking 2%.
Yes.
That's it.
But it's a tightrope.
Andy, hands over and tells you let's call. Hands over and tells you let's call.
Call it, Amy.
Safety of students, I would never do it. Alan, you know.
Do we need to alter?
All right, we will wrestle with it a little bit and bring something back to you at the next meeting. How's that?
So, just one thing to leave you guys with. At the end of the day, just think about this. It's just a lens that we're providing a factor for. It could be the other way around. At the end of the day, it's just really how you're feeling about that when you're thinking about putting a school. Okay? The fact that we're going to average all 5 of these together really kind of blends that notion together based on the value that we're going to put on it. But the idea is to give you kind of a blended perspective of that and really it's a more well-rounded piece of information. At the end of the day, we're going to put that order in front of you guys. And you're going to decide if that's what you want to do. Okay?
All right, while you're wrapping up, just a couple of quick items to say to you. I hope you noticed that the tax rate of GCISD is considerably lower than some of our neighboring school districts. That was intentional by the board to build capacity, knowing that there were needs coming, right? There's a comprehensive spreadsheet coming your way that's been color-coded by a subcommittee. You're going to have plenty of items to look at regardless of which committee you're in. And as I mentioned to you, at some point the whole committee will weigh in on all of those. You're going to use these priority factors to evaluate each line and grade the projects. Have a great rest of your evening. I'm sorry we were in late.